Normally, a hotel is supposed to have a contract with you where when you book a room, they hold the room for you. But as Jerry Seinfeld has discovered, a lot of these travel based businesses sometimes fail at this. So, what should you do if you show up to a hotel and they're like, sorry, we're overbooked. We have to walk you, find somewhere else? Today, we're going to talk about that. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my co host.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherwin, the other half of the Credit Card BS podcast. Today, what to expect when a hotel walks you? Like, are there specific policies? Are there tips and tricks for you to maximize what you're able to get out of the hotel in the event that something like this happens? We're all going to go over that today. So, this episode is kind of inspired by some interesting stories I've read online recently. So, one example was the Park Hyatt Los Cabos opening delay. This was a property that was supposed to open like pretty much around this time earlier in the year. But since it's a new property and they're still finishing up construction, it keeps getting pushed back and back. And people's reservations in like September, October have been canceled. Now, one person was really upset because they offered them to move them to the Thompson Cape, which is another Hyatt property in Los Cabos, but they would still have to pay the rate for that. So they gave them either the choice between a full refund with 1,000-point compensation or the booking at the Thompson Cape, but the guest still has to use points. In this case, those dates that they wanted had no ward availability, so they would have to pay cash rate. So it just seemed like a really bad way of handling the situation. I feel like in this scenario, they should have just moved them over for free. What do you think, Sean, this situation?
Yeah, I don't really even understand what the first option is of moving to the Cape. It's like, wow, you can just pay. Like that's just saying like, oh, you can just pay for the room. Like they did nothing. Like right, like you still have to pay points. Oh, sorry, there's no points availability. Sorry, you got to pay cash. Like great, you're giving me the privilege to pay for a different hotel when your hotel was closed. Like even if I was going to do that, why would I not just take the full refund and then get the 10,000 points and then go pay for the Thompson myself? It's not like doesn't sound like they were giving me any kind of discount. I agree it's a very bad way to handle things because someone could have already booked flights. Someone could have already planned ahead. Now, I understand, yes, this is a new hotel. It should be expected that some of these things happen. But I feel like, it should be a thing of you've kind of made this promise the hotel is going to open this day. You should do something to say, like, sorry, we didn't honor this, right? You may have already booked flights, things like that. Greater points compensation, I think, would be fair. Or at the very least, saying something like, yes, we will get you in at the Thompson the Cape, maybe at a discounted rate or something, right? Maybe like 5,000 points off a night. And it doesn't matter if there's going to be standard room availability or not. We will get you a room, something like that, just to show. I'm not saying it has to be like a fully comp stay, but, they should do something to say like, hey, we're kind of sorry that we didn't handle this right.
Yeah, I think at the minimum, if they just give the refund option, the comp should be like 25,000 points in my mind. I think that would be more reasonable. And then, or like if they're moving them to Thompson Cape, especially if the guest has status with Hyatt, they should be getting like a guaranteed free suite upgrade, or like the whole thing should be comp, to be honest. Because like the Thompson Cape and the Park Hyatt Los Cabos are they're both nice properties, but in my mind, they're still very different types of properties, different degree of luxury. And
Yes.
it still doesn't measure up. So I think, anyway, more needs to be done there, right? So this was a particular case study, but what about like a more typical example of like you actually walk to a hotel and it was supposed to go okay, but they just had some issue and they weren't able to accommodate your stay. Generally, there's like an order of priority in which someone is walked, and it's not just random or whoever shows up first or last. So if you have elite status or you book directly with the hotel, you're generally given high priority. You are very unlikely to be walked, to be honest. If you did not book the cheapest room, you're less likely to be walked. So people who book third party or like through a portal or through like Expedia, like a third party, or if you book like the cheapest base room, like usually a non-refundable rate, like an advanced purchase rate, like a very low or much cheaper rate, you're more likely to be walked. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, honestly, if you have like a good elite status hotel, it's pretty unlikely that they'll walk you unless like the whole hotel is closed or like a huge pipe burst and like half the hotel is unsuitable for accommodation or something like major like that.
Yeah, it's very, very unlikely, and except in like some type of like weird circumstance like that. Like, yes, it's not just usually going to be like a typical, oh, we oversold. Let's walk the globalists that stay here 10 times before, right? It's going to be let's walk the guy that's never stayed here before, who booked via Expedia for a non-refundable base room, and they booked it like 2 days ago, right? Like that's who's going to be the first person to be walked.
Yep.
But if you, now the question really becomes though, let's say regardless, you have elite status, don't have elite status, whatever, what should you expect and what should you push for if you are walked? Obviously, this will depend on the hotel. This will depend on the management of the hotel, as well as the level of luxury of the brand, right? If you're checking into a Raffles or a Four Seasons or something like that, and you are walked, you can expect them to handle it. First of all, much less likely you'll be walked at one of those brands, but you can expect them to handle it with, a higher level of seriousness than a 4 points flex, for example. But generally, I would say, Insure, and tell me if you disagree with this, but the first night of accommodation should be paid for by the hotel that walked you. So let's say I'm staying at like a Hyatt Regency, they're sold out. They're like, oh, you got to go to the Westin across the street. That night at the Westin should be paid for by the Hyatt Regency. And I think most hotels would usually do that. Am I correct in that?
Yes. I mean, ideally, they would try to move you to another hotel within the same chain, so they wouldn't have to be
Yes.
paying out of pocket for a different chain's hotel. But in that situation, yes, it is reasonable to not just ask them to comp that, but also for additional compensation for the inconvenience, usually in the form of points or some type of credit.
Absolutely. And so I think this is a good segue into
another tip I want to bring up is like try to get this resolved at the hotel. But if their level of compensation that they provide you feel is inadequate, or they're just not able to give you a good solution, don't hesitate to call the corporate chains, so like be it like Hyatt corporate or Marriott or Hilton corporate. They might have a little more authority and control to give you some type of reimbursement that the individual property refuses to.
Absolutely. That's 100% correct, because it could also just be like, look, maybe you just get unlucky and it's like someone on the night shift, right? Because a lot of times people that get walked, it's like who it checks in the latest. And it might be someone on the night shift who's like just got trained 2 weeks ago and they don't know how to do this. Maybe they want to help you out. They just don't know how. I think we should talk about kind of the chain that has the clearest, with heavy quotes, form of walk compensation, right? And I want to say the clearest, I mean, it's heavy quotes because as with everything in Bonvoy, there's a lot of like exceptions and it's broken down to different brands, but also like properties have been known for not always honoring this. So essentially Marriott has something called the ultimate reservation guarantee, where if you book direct, I believe you have to book direct to be eligible for this. But the idea is if you book direct and they're unable to honor your reservation, they'll pay for your accommodations for the first night at an equivalent hotel, or they say nearby hotel. But the idea is it should be an equivalent hotel. Additionally, though, if you have elite status with Marriott, you will also receive compensation based on the brand that you have a stay booked at. And so, for example, if you are at kind of the premium or most of the luxury segments, I'm not going to read all of these, but like Edition, Luxury Collection, W, JW, Marriott, Sheraton, Delta, etc., all elite members. So I believe this means you probably have to have silver, elite, or higher. Well, in addition to the previous compensation of the first night being paid for, would receive 200 plus 90,000 Bonvoy points, which I actually do find to be pretty decent compensation. Sherwin, do you have any thoughts on
and that's on top of them covering your first night, not in lieu of. So I do think that's very reasonable. I mean, the crazy one to me is if you get walked from a Ritz-Carlton Reserve or a St. Regis and you're Titanium or Ambassador Elite, you get $200 and 140,000 Marriott points, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the probability that a Titanium gets walked from a Ritz in the first place is probably very low. So it's really just more to be on the paper. I think this would really only happen if like they shut down like basically the whole hotel for some reason.
Yes, I think you're right on that. Like I think the only case in which that would ever happen is like like there's something like a pipe bursts or like the water gets shut off or something like totally beyond their control, which you're still entitled, I believe, in those. I mean, they may try to argue otherwise, but like it still is a walk. But like the idea of like an Ambassador Elite being walked from like a Ritz Reserve is just so comical to me. Because that would like never happen, and like the fact that anyone would get walked from a Ritz Reserve is just comical to me. But of course,
now, in this table, it only specifies Titanium Ambassador for Ritz Reserve, and St. Regis. Does that mean if you're Platinum or lower, you get no additional compensation for Ritz?
So I think in theory, yes. Now in practice, I would be surprised if you're going to a Ritz and then walking you and then like not offering anything. As much as we like to joke about like Ritz not having the best service among the luxury hotel market, I wouldn't assume it's that bad. I feel like they would try to help you out a bit. And this is kind of where the point of like know where you're staying, right? If you're staying at a luxury tier brand, even if you don't have elite status, you should push for some additional compensation, probably in the form of points. I think that's the easiest for the hotel to give, and they're the most willing to give. So if you're like at a W or something and you have no elite status, or you're like at a Ritz, no elite status, I would say like minimum 50K Bonvoy points for being walked is like, the bare minimum in my book, even if you're not like on paper covered. But obviously it's like a very your mileage may vary situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would just give this tip in general, like if it's important to you that you not be walked, if it's like a critical hotel stay before like important business meeting, for example, or something, like just try to book direct to the extent possible. And because you not only will you get like better priority in terms of not being walked, but also like you're less likely to end up with like the second floor room facing the like parking lot and dumpsters,
Yes.
right? Like there's a whole hierarchy in your whole system how they prioritize room assignments, and even if you don't have elite status, just by booking directly as a member, like is still treated more favorably than a complete third party booking. So just keep that in mind.
I think that's a very good point, because a lot of times like hotels, like yes, they might have a standard room category, but there's like even within those, like there's the good standard rooms and the bad standard rooms, right? There could be one like looking at a wall or something, or that has like a noise problem. And the reason, like for those of you that don't know why booking direct is so important, is booking through something like Expedia, they take a massive hit. Like we're not talking like 10%. It could be like at some hotels, like up to a third of like the revenue is going as like a commission to a high powered like booking agent like that. And it pisses them off. And you can understand why, because it's like, well, this guy, like, this marketing agent's taking a third of our revenue. They're not actually doing anything to implement the hotel stay. If they had booked direct, we would have made like so much more money. And that's why, right? Because they have to have walk someone. They're going to pick the person that's paying like 30% less than everyone else.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like when you're booking through like a credit card travel portal, Chase or Capital One or City Travel Portal, those are also considered third-party bookings
Yes.
and not direct. So it's very similar to like an Expedia booking. So keep that in mind. Like when we talk about booking direct, we really do mean booking direct with the hotel, unless it's like some special Amex FHR
Yes.
or Chase the Edit property type of situation. Otherwise, like direct means like on Hyatt.com or on Hilton.com, etc. So we talked about Marriott's ultimate reservation guarantee. What about the other hotel chains like IHG, Hyatt, Hilton? So they actually don't have any specified policy. Is it just like your mileage may vary, Sean? Like how would you advise people on this?
I mean, pretty much, yeah. I think like in terms of some tips, I would say is like, obviously leverage your elite status, know the brand. I mean, I would probably say like, in terms of like what to push for, right? Obviously, minimum first night covered. That's a given, right? Also, that like first night should be at like an equivalent or better hotel. Okay. If I'm staying at a Ritz, you should not move me to like a view. I should be at like a Ritz or St. Regis or something like that, right? If I'm at a Hyatt Regency, it should be Regency or above, like Regency, Grand Park, something like that, right? You should never go, like, I would never push, like, if they're trying to put you down a category, push against that. And then I would probably say the equivalent of a few $100s of those hotel points. Obviously, depending on the brand and depending on your elite status, that changes. If I'm at a Holiday Inn and I have like no IHG status, okay, maybe like 30K IHG points plus the first night covers fare. If I'm a Hyatt Globalist that stays 60 nights and I'm at a Park Hyatt, first thing I'm doing is ringing my concierge and going like, yo, what's going on here, right? If assuming the hotel is not being reasonable. I think it's a huge, your mileage may vary, and I think it's a lot of it depends on the brand you're staying at. I think that's like really important to remember, that, that's why luxury hotels are nice, because you're not just paying for the fancy room and amenities, you're paying for the better service. And if they fail on a fundamental level to deliver the most basic aspect of the service, which is rendering the room that you paid for, right? That is like one of the biggest service failures they can do. And so there should be like commensurate compensation associated with that. But I would basically just say, yeah, first night covered, few $100s of hotel points at like a minimum, and then it goes up from there depending on the circumstances and all that.
Yep. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like and subscribe. If you're interested in opening any credit cards, please consider using one of the links down in the description below. It greatly helps support our channel. And finally, Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
Yes, if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers and credit card enthusiasts entirely for free, check out the Traveling Discord group at the link in the description. You will learn a ton, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.